Quite a lot of interesting games in the third round of FIDE Grand Swiss. I'm going to take you through some of the games now, starting with game of Nihal Sarin. Now, I have played against Kuibekar of Temur in one of the events and is a very tricky player, is very alert to tactics. But in this particular game, Nihal Sarin completely outplays his opponent. Let's get started. Let me flip the board. Here, Nihal was black, and Nihal went for a very rare line. And if you look at the chess.com openings, then it's called as the Morphy defense after knight g7. The point here is Nihal is developing the knight on e7, not on f6, and the pawn is on b7. So we cannot really consider this as the archangles yet. So after knight e7, d4, ed, cd, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop into d2, queen into d2, he went for d5. Now this position somewhat resembles the line after bishop c4, bishop c5, c3, knight f6, d4, ed, cd, bishop b4, bd2, bd2, knight d2, and here the correct move for the black side is d5, which is a very popular line. And after ed5, knight d5, white has queen b3. But in this game against Kuibekar of Temur, bd2, Kuibekar played queen d2, and after d5, e5, queen d5, castles, bishop e6, knight c3, queen h5. We get a position where white has an isolated queen pawn and black's queen is already on h5. Now there came a very interesting moment after knight e5 castles and bishop d1. Now this move, bishop d1, is a novelty. Bishop into c6 was played against Tkachev. Bologan played it with the white side, and the game ended in a draw. This game happened 11 years back. But in the game after bishop d1, Nihal played queen h4, and after knight f3, this can be considered as a silent draw for, because if black plays queen h5, there is knight e5 and there is a repetition. In this position, Nihal went for queen h6, which I would say is pretty interesting, but it has a cost attached to it. The cost is that black will be doubling the pawns with queen h6, gh6. Now the advantage here is that the knight won't be disturbing the bishop. Also, there could be some activity on the g line in the coming moves, but none of that happened actually. In this position, Nihal focused on the isolated pawn on d4, but it's not so easy to capture this pawn, as you will notice. After bishop c2, he first played rook d8, and white has this counterplay connected with the pawns on the queen side. So after bishop e4, rook d6, Nihal wants to protect the pawn on c7 and also make sure that the pawn on d4 falls. He can obviously cannot take directly because the b7 was hanging, so he makes necessary arrangements. Knight wants to come to c5, so prophylaxis, and after bishop d3, he plays pawn to a5. Now in this position, Temur Kuibekar faltered, and he could have played bishop to b5. The point is that the knight cannot move, and if the rook moves on d8, then the c7 is indirectly hanging. So this could have been an interesting option. Let's say rook d8, take on c6, and knight e5, and then yeah, position is pretty much equal. But rook c3 was a mistake, and after rook c3, Nihal found his chance. I think what white missed is probably after knight d4, knight d5. He probably expected only the rook move, but Nihal found a counter-attacking move, which is knight d5, which changes the entire shape of the game. The point is, if knight d7, there is knight c3, and if the rook moves, there is rook e7. Simply, black is a pawn up. But it's hard to believe that this game ended in a mating net. Black eventually checkmated white, and I think this is worth saying. After bishop f1, he took advantage of the hanging piece with bishop takes h3, and then after knight c4, played rook g6. He's threatening knight f3. After rook d1, it feels like one of the knights is going to fall, but c5 is always there. But as Lasker pointed out, if you see a good move, look for a better one. Nihal did exactly that. He played knight f3 check, and then there's a blow which helps black to checkmate white king immediately with bishop into g2, which I would give double exclaim. because it's a tactic and a very cute tactic. After bishop g2 there comes rook e4. It's a double rook mate with rook h4. This is inevitable, you can't stop it, and that's how Nihal won his game. So now let's go on to the next game. The next game is a game between Harikrishna Pentala and Morovic Fernandez Ivan. I think in this game, Grandmaster Harikrishna Pentala, he held a very stable edge right from the beginning. He got a double bishop advantage out of the opening. You see, he got the double bishop, and queens got exchanged quite early. And we have a very classic pawn structure, which is 3-3 versus 4-2. So one of the plans for black is to expand on the king side, but it's important to note that white has the double bishop advantage, and white will be hoping to create a passer on the queen side. Now the game actually was like the game went into an end game, but it's important to note that this factor of white's ability to create pass pawn is a vital idea, and this did prove very serious. After bishop d7, he developed a few, he made some developing moves. So this was what we call artificial castling for the king. The king got a safe square on b2, and he exchanged one pair of rooks, and now he got these pawns. Black has these 4 pawns on the light squares, and first what white needs is a pawn break. So after rook d7, he immediately got it with h5, and after hg6, bishop e2, rook h1, he also got an open file. The interesting decision for me was after knight g4. What will you do here? It's a very critical moment, I think, and I really loved the execution part here. He played bishop into g4, which a lot of us would be very hesitant to do because white has a double bishop and then you're giving it, but there is a bigger picture that Harikrishna Pentala saw it, and after fg4, bishop e3, white has a very good bishop, and the chances of creating passer are high. Also, since it's an opposite color bishop endgame, I think white can also hope for mating attack. So considering these factors, the hindsight, now I know that this was a very good idea, but this move is a very instructive one, I would say. So he played bishop into g4 and then played bishop e3. This might also go into a textbook on exchanges. After g3, fg3, bishop c6, g4, he slowly got his king, and at the end he created a passed pawn in this position with a5 and then won the game, which was a very nice comeback for Grandmaster Harikrishna. Yeah, so now his opponent resigned. Bishop b6 is coming, followed by a7 and rook c8. So that was Harikrishna's game. Next we'll go to the game between Vantika and Divya Deshmukh. So in this game, after d4, knight f6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, before we got a Ragozin, and Vantika chose queen a4 check line. Then I think the critical moment in this game after castle dc4, bishop c4 was this moment in which Divya played b5. A previous game followed with e5, and after d5, knight e5, rook e5, e4, b5. This was also a possibility, but after b5, bishop e2, bishop b7, rook fd1, Divya Deshmukh tried to give both her bishops for 2 knights, but that did not really prove dangerous. Vantika played a very smooth game. She defended all the important threats and came out very strong. After b4, knight a4, I'm going to show you the moment where she swapped the bishop, like bishop takes c5 happened, and then bishop takes f3 happened. Now the drawback of these exchanges is that white has the potential to open up the position. Also, with this exchange, gf3 is like a boon in disguise, because the king will come to h1, the rook will come to g1, and we might have a very classic Fischer attack. In this position, in order to combat these ideas, black tried desperately to create some attack through some sacrifices, but that did not really work. Like in this position, she played knight e5, and after bd5 bishop c3 she played d4, and then after knight d3 she tried to create some threats, but Vantika had it all under control. It's just simply a piece up, and after rook e3 it looks like black's pieces are coming towards the king and it's going to get dangerous, but nothing of that sort happened. Rook g e1 followed, and then after rook e3 queen e3 she found a move that not only fuels all the turns, like she found a move that not only defends all the threats but also created her own threat with queen g7 mate, and the exchange of queens means that white is winning. So that was a very nice game by Vantika. And now let's go to the game between Padmini Raut and Vaishali. So Padmini Raut played the Reti opening. She has played this before. In this game, Vaishali tried the Chigorin approach with knight c6. This kind of play is usually seen often in the games of Morozovich. After d4, bishop f5, bg2, knight b4, white reluctantly has to defend the pawn on c2 by going with the knight to e3, which Padmini did, but then she came back to b1 once the job was over. And I think they reached a critical position quite early after knight c3. In this position, the knight on c6 is awkwardly placed because the pawn is on c7. The pawn would love to go to c5, and I think this knight on c3 also needs to be exchanged, and white has a very annoying threat with knight e5. Considering these factors, I think black had to go knight e4 to exchange one pair of knights. The point is, if white plays a cd5, then black can just play d5, and after queen b3 I can go knight c3, bc3 and knight a5. Black position is okay, but after knight c3 castles, Padmini found a chance and played a very nice move, knight e5. And now the problem of c6 knight is clear. If the knight goes to b8, then b7 and d5 will come under pressure with the possible queen b3. Also after knight e5, if you ask me what's the best move for black, I think it was a5. The point is that if knight c6, bc6, this rook would come to b8, and the position is dynamically balanced, I would say. But after knight e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, white is clearly better. After knight d7, she picked up the pawn on d5, and then pawn on e6. The b7 hangs, and that's the culprit of this variation for black. And once she got the pawn on b7, she defended her queenside pawns, and then created a mating net, or let's say attack on the weak f7 point. And in this position, you see she got rook d1, she got all her pieces into play, and then after rook d3, Vaishali resigned because rook f3 is very annoying, f7 is weak, black has no counterplay whatsoever. It was a really nice win by Padmini. Now let's go to the game between Harika, Dronavalli and Stefanova Antonetta. In this game, Harika played the Rai Lopez, and this was the Archangels. After h3, bishop h5 was played by MVL. This was played by Caruana against MVL in the Paris Open, I think, and the tour that happened in Paris. But after h3, bishop takes f3 was played by Stefanova, and after queen f3, b4, a5. I think they got a complicated position after bishop a7, and in this position, after bishop d2, c6, I would say that there were a few moments which were not so clear. For example, in this position, after knight c1, d5, bishop b5, rook b5, black picked up the pawn on b7, on a5, which helped white to create a lot of play. Let me go to that position after rook fb1. Yeah, so in this position, black has everything in control. Queen b8 is also coming very soon, but Stefanova played d takes e4, d takes e4, rook takes a5, and this was not really clear as to why black picked the pawn, because after rook a5, white is the one who has a lot of play, but after rook a5, queen a5, the rook comes to the 7th rank, the bishop needs help. Bishop could have come to c5, but Stefanova played queen c5, and then after knight g3, this knight is very eager to come to f5, and Stefano found a chance to liquidate the position with queen f2 because the bishop on h4 is not in the best of its place, because bishop on h4 is going to get trapped with g5, and then after bishop g5 h5, black's position, if you see, black has a pawn plus, but after king e3 and knight f5, black's position is in some sort of a bind, and this actually played out on our mind. If you see right now, the position is objectively slightly better for white, despite white being a pawn down, but uh, black was defending passively, and at one point black had to give up a pawn to defend, which black did not do. So I'm coming to that position after rook c7. In this position, you see there are 4 pawns for each side, but black had to choose active defense and play rook d1, so that black can defend based on these 2 pawns. A sample line could be rook c6, king e7. If king f3, there is just check. Now the thing is, there are 2 pawns that will consistently require support in this endgame for white, and based on these factors, I think a draw is achievable. But after f5, it is black who has weaknesses, and it also gave chance to white to eliminate this weakness. So after ef5, king f5, black's 3 pawns would require consistent support, and if you use principle of 2 weaknesses, I think white has already achieved that. And after g4, king g6, king e4, the plan that Harika opted was to bring this rook to f5, and that she achieved after rook f3, rook f6, rook f5. And this king and pawn endgame was very well calculated. It's a forced win. This pawn will queen faster than the c pawn, as you can see. If you're wondering what happens after king e7, king h6, king f8, then black has king h7, ensuring that the pawn goes forward. And so here Harika won the game. And in other results, if you see, Sethuraman lost his game, and even Adiban lost his game. So there were some draws as well. Let me check the results. Yes, and Sasikiran drew his game against Maksudlu Parham. He's on 2 points now. And Gukesh also drew against Artemev. Pragnananda drew against David Hovil. Arjun Erigisi drew against Mamedov Rov. Sethuraman lost to David Navara. And then Ganguly lost to Sweets Zarius. Ronak drew against Van Forest Jordan, and I covered Harikrishna's game already. Adiban lost to Onishchuk Volodymyr. And yeah, so those were the key results from India's point of view. And in the next round, Nihal Sarin will be playing against Pavel Pankratov, and Artemev versus Sikiran. I think that's also going to be very exciting to watch. Savian Samuel will be playing against Pragnananda, and then Arjun Arigisi will be playing against Sanan Sujirov. Sanan Sujirov, yes, I'm right. And then Van Forest Jordan will be playing against Ganguly. Sethuraman will be playing against Gelfand Boris. I think that's another clash, which I'm very personally excited to watch. Adiban is playing against Jonas from Denmark. And I think, yeah, that's about it. So those are some of the key pairings for the round. And in the women's section, Harika will be playing against woman grandmaster Zhu Zainer from China, and Padmini will be playing against Alina Kashlinskaya. Vantika will be playing against Kyrgyzstan, and Vaishali will be playing against Kamali Denova Merut from Kazakhstan. Diva will be playing against Sophie Millet. So those are the pairings. Don't forget to tune in to chess.com/TV for the broadcast. And we also released a new feature yesterday. It's called the Game Review, and do try it out on chess.com. I'll be back with another video soon. Until then, take care and bye bye.